Think we're good.
All right. Welcome, Osimo YouTube channel followers. Here we are. It's your old pal Emac coming to you on Hit the Ice with one Jake Hari. Who knew your old pal is multi-diverse here and playing quite a few sports, Jake. Thank you for including me as we gear up for the NBA All-Star break. I appreciate it.
Yeah. It's nice to have some more people interested in NHL DFS. Even if it means, or even if it's only because NBA is not in session, but still cool nonetheless. Hope we see some pretty big prize pools for some people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, tonight, the prize pools aren't gigantic for NHL because we still do have the Rising Stars contest and NBA game. Now, that's not until 9 o'clock tonight, but for those of you hoopers that have made the jump over here to watch the NFL, or probably the NHL stream, I wanted to just say congratulations. You're going to have some fun. I'm going to drop that Rising Stars article we have on the front page. We also on the front page have projections for this. Now, that's a premium offering, but we are doing this. For anybody that has an NBA package, we are giving you access to everything else just during the NBA All-Star break. You don't have to, you're not signing up for anything extra. We're just turning on all content for you. So that's something to take advantage of. If you're not yet a member, you should use the promo code Hit the Ice, all one word, and you can get 50% off any 1 month subscription there on the Osmo subscription page. So if you were to choose NBA, you would get all content for this week, so you're not missing out on stuff. And we do have, again, like I said, player projections for the Rising Stars game, and we will have player projections for the NBA All-Star game. And these were actually done by Alex and Tom overseeing them themselves. Now, for the rest of our projections, you know, they have inputs and they kibitz, but for NHL, it's Jake's baby. For NFL, we have a couple people behind the scenes working on it. For NBA, we've got Lofty, Alex, Tom, Josh. Those guys are all in the mix there. So it's worthwhile. But not to fear. We're talking NHL here. Now, we have a 4-game slate. So what we're going to do is give you 15 or 20 minutes of general strategy, how to approach this. And that's why I'm here, because I play about 30 or 40 NHL days a year. And I used to play a lot more when NBA Thursdays were only 2 games. They've gotten a little more exciting the last few years, but I like to play the NBA and then take a break from it. And then NHL is kind of where I like to go. It's fun. It reminds me of baseball a little bit. They're stacking their strategy, their synergy plays, etc. So we're going to kind of start out here. We'll step back. A couple other free things that we have available. This will be available through the weekend and into next week. Alex Baker, Osmo himself, has written an NHL primer. We have 3 different free articles today. We have a Spotlight Stack article. We have a Line Changes article. And then Nolan Kelly has done a GPP recommendation article where he's also talking about what we have for some of the projections. And then Alex, Osmo himself, ranks players, goalies, defensemen, and lines. It's pretty awesome. So, Jake, I'm going to kind of turn this over to you. The first and foremost thing that we want to understand is what is stacking when it comes to the NHL?
Yeah, so stacking is when you're playing a player with 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, even 5 players from the same team. And usually for NHL, it's same line or same power play. So similar to MLB, although we have, obviously the positions differ, and the strategy is a little bit different, but it's similar to MLB in that you're trying to catch a lot of points when a certain event happens. So like what Alex talks about in the MLB primer, same thing goes for NHL. When a goal happens, it's a very high event-based sport. You want to rack up as many points as possible. So that's the point of stacking. The most common stack is probably an even strength stack. There's 3 players on a line, so you would stack all 3 of those players at the even strength line. And that's really what stacking does.
All right. Well, the next thing that's going to be fun that we'll want to talk about, what are lines? So how this works is in the NHL, you'll notice that most players play somewhere between 45 seconds and like a minute 15, minute 30, depending on what's going on, how close it is to the end of the period, if there's a rush on, if they're man advantage, power play, et cetera, all of that. But generally, there are 3 forward lines. Usually your best line is line 1, then you have line 2 and line 3. Now, within those, sometimes you'll have your checking line or your defensive line. And a lot of times it's the home team that gets to choose which line goes out first. Explain how line changes work for the players, because you can't just pell-mell put your lines out if you don't want to.
Say that again?
Or if you
line.
Oh,
just line
so
changes.
the home. So I thought there was something to do where I thought it was the home team.
Last change.
Last change. Sorry.
Sure,
Thank you. I didn't know I know what it is. I just don't know the right words to say what it is.
Yep. Last change. So last change, what that means is it's a tangible advantage that the home team has. Anytime there's a dead puck, outside of a few circumstances, the home team will get to decide who they want on the ice: forwards, defensemen. So the away team will have to decide who they want on the ice first. Then the home team gets to react. So if you have a really good shutdown line and you're at home, like let's say Calgary 2, they've been known as a really good shutdown line for the past couple of years. If they're going up against, let's say, Boston 1, and they're at full strength, and anytime Boston 1 goes out on the ice, for Calgary's sake, if they're the home team, they would want to put their best shutdown line on them as much as possible. Some teams take more advantage of this than others. But the ones that do, it really helps us out because we know which lines are going to face against which lines for the most part.
Right. And this will be something that comes into play Saturday, Tuesday, Thursday on the larger slates. With tonight, there are just 4 games. So that's why we're doing this little bit of a primer here. We're going to kick this out onto the podcast channel. So generally, there are 3 offensive lines comprised of 3, we'll call them forwards. It's really a center and 2 wingers. There's 2 and sometimes 3 defensive pairings. That third defensive pairing doesn't get a lot of ice time. And then there's generally 2 power play units. Now, what you'll see on the power play units is usually 2 guys from the top line. Generally, it's your best scorer and your best passer. And then your best defensive player is on the power play. And then you'll see probably the best player, depending on what you get out of your first 2 guys on the top line, coming from line 2. And then the 5th guy will just be, whatever it tends to be. It changes by teams. Sometimes they bring in a designated guy who's not really on a line, but he comes in on the power plays, etc. But there's 2 of those. Explain what happens during a power play or the man advantage.
Sure. So it's 5-on-4 or 5-on-3 or 4-on-3 in some cases. If someone takes a penalty in overtime, you see that one quite a bit. Basically, the team with more players has a very good chance to score. About 25% give or take on the season of goals come on the man advantage. So players that play on the power play, of course, have more value than players that don't. That doesn't mean that just because a player is on a power play, is listed there, is even going to play there. Some teams will shuffle around their power plays more than others. But in general, you want players that get more power play time, and specifically players that play on their top unit. So like Tampa has a really good top unit, Boston. There's a few teams that come to mind where their top unit just gets a ton of ice time during that 2 minutes, and then the second unit doesn't really matter all that much. But other teams like Vegas, they've got a really good top 6 forward core, and they more spread it out. Columbus has been doing that for a little while this year as well. So it depends on the team, but in general, you want players in NHL DFS that get power play time.
Okay, and then a couple other terms that come to mind, and then we'll start to get into the good stuff here. But Corsica, or pardon me, not Corsica. Corsi. Good. Am I off in Europe somewhere on the Mediterranean? No, I'm not. Corsi, talk about Corsi, high danger chances, etc. Because there are shots on goal, and then there are shots, and there's a lot of nuance here in hockey for those of us that dip our toe in every now and then.
Yeah, so it's probably more of an advanced thing, I think, for people that are just casual, and you don't necessarily need to know all this to really be good at NHL DFS. I think it is somewhat of an edge if you do look into the numbers a little bit. Other people will argue differently, but Corsi is just it counts all shots, not just shots on goal. So it does count the ones on goal, but it also counts missed shots and block shots. So anytime a player attempts a shot is another way. Shot attempts, that is considered Corsi. And Corsi for, Corsi against is what some people refer to as possession stats, because there's no time of possession stat in NHL, DFS, in the NHL in general, like there is in other sports like the NFL. But you do want, obviously, more shot attempts and less shot attempts against. And that sort of goes into knowing which teams are carrying play, which teams might be dominating play. So you might hear me refer to Corsi for, Corsi against, scoring chances for, high danger chances for. All these are just measuring how good a team, a player, or a line is.
All right. I think that's going to hit most of our stuff here. Thank you, NHL guys, for being patient. But remember, we're trying to help anybody not listening to this that's an NBA player that's coming over. They're the fish. You're hoping we get more of them. But this is one of the things that we're doing, again, for all of our Osmo NBA subscribers, is we're giving them access to all of the NHL content. We also, of course, this is the Daytona 500 weekend, so they're kicking that off down there on Sunday. We've got the Rising Stars game tonight. We do have projections for that. There's an article on the homepage. We'll have projections for the NBA All-Star game. And then, of course, we have golf. Daily golf now. Boy, I remember when golf was 4 long days. Then it was weekend golf. Now they just run showdown slates for everything. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But we've got content for all of that as well. But now we're going to dive in here a little bit to the actual NHL. So I'm going to kind of talk about how I use the Osmo tools to make a competent lineup real quick, and then we'll let Jake get into the good stuff here. So generally what I like to do is I start off with Jake's projections, which I think are very important. It helps you understand where the players are, how to rank them, etc. But it can be a little confusing because it's a lot like baseball where, gosh, it is a guy that's projected for 3.1 that much better or worse for a guy than a guy that's 3.2. Well, you need to learn other context. What line are they on? What roles do they have in the power play? Who are they going to be facing against, etc. So you don't want to just pick a bunch of one-offs that have the highest score. That's the quickest way to see some fun goals on your lineup, but you're going to need damn near everybody to get a goal in order for that lineup to do very well. So you want to look at how you're going to do roster construction. I then pull in Alex Baker's player grades for Osmo's player grades, and then the line grades. And I generally pick 2 or 3 lines that I like, and then I start fitting in some cheap players around it. Goalies, I think, are very important, and Jake does a cheat sheet. In addition to his rankings, he has a cheat sheet that culls down his players to a more manageable list of guys that if you just want something, you want to throw $5 in, kick back, drink a beer, and hockey night in Canada, that's perfect. Pick some of the guys off that sheet, have some fun. You're going to have a lineup that, we're not guaranteeing you a win, but you're not going to fall on your face either, which I think is what most of us are looking for, which brings me to my final thing. These are very, very top-heavy tournaments. Now, I will be doing a lot of mass multi-entry tomorrow. I'm going to be using my Fantasy Cruncher t-shirt on. I'll be using Fantasy Cruncher. It's a lot of fun, but you need to set up rules. You need to understand how the lines work, how to make stacking. And Jake and Nolan have done an excellent article or excellent YouTube video, which we'll drop the link in chat for there. But they go down how to use Fantasy Cruncher. Now, the best thing about Fantasy Cruncher, you can use the rewind feature. So you can play around with that tonight. You can pick any slate. Pick, the last Tuesday slate, which was a little bit bigger, or even yesterday's slate. Play around with it. See how it works when you use stacks for line 1, line 2, power play 1, power play 2, etc. That's the fun part. Back to game selection, I just want to have a little something on the line. So I'm not looking for glory in these incredibly top-heavy tournaments, but I've got 1 in the $5 contest now. I've got 5 in the $1 contest, and then I'm playing a couple 3-mans and then a bunch of smaller, not the big ones, but the smaller 50-50s and the smaller groups, like 10-mans and 20-mans, just because I'd like to win. I don't know exactly what's going on because I don't know all the players as nuanced as I did once upon a time, but I've played a season-long fantasy hockey for 25 years now, It's a lot slower. You don't have to worry about individual matchups, etc. So that's why we've got Jake here. So that's how I build my competent lineup. Works out well. I also have mucked around with Fantasy Cruncher, bringing in Jake's projections and stuff. That's a lot of fun as well. But you need to have starting points. So the articles get you there. The projections, definitely cover everything. The rankings from Osmo, the assigned grades do. But now we need to talk matchups. So we got a 4-gamer here, Jake. I am but the guest. I will sit quietly here in the corner. I will ask NBA type player questions from you from time to time, but we're turning over the heavy lifting analysis to you now.
Sure. You want me to just go through game by game, kind of?
Yeah, how you do.
Okay.
Pretend I'm not even here unless I ask a question.
No,
and then
no,
you can still pretend
questions.
I'm not here.
Yeah, and chat if you guys have questions about specific players, or if I'm saying stuff that doesn't make sense, feel free to let me know. I'll try to keep an eye on that as well, as we always do. So we're going to go first game. You see it on your screen right here. Rangers and Sabres. We've got a 2.7 implied total for the Rangers, 3.2 for the Sabres. We've got a couple top-heavy teams, I think. Alexander Georgiev going up against Linus Ullmark. You see these prices are pretty standard for goalies. Home favorites get up around 8K. Road dogs around 68 to 7,300. So just talking about pricing a little bit, there's nothing outrageous that I see here. I think I do have DraftKings pricing on, so that's exactly what I wanted. I play mostly on DraftKings. A line that I wrote up was the Rodriguez, Sheary, and Reinhart line, Buffalo 2. I know that's a Slack chat favorite for some of us. So shout out to Buffalo 2 here. They're cheap, and they're going to get the better of the matchups. I think the top lines are probably going to duke it out against each other. Eichel against the Zibanejad line. So that sort of leaves the Rodriguez, Sheary, Reinhart line going up against Rangers 2 and Rangers 3, these two lines. And the Hayes line, they don't have a huge sample, but they are pretty bad in their short sample, like 43 minutes. They've given up about 15 high danger chances against per 60, or I'm sorry, in total on a per 60 basis, that's almost 20, and that's really bad. So average high danger chances against per 60 in the 10 to 12 range. If you're anything more than that, you are pretty bad in my eyes, or at least pretty leaky defensively. So I just think the Rodriguez line is going to be able to generate a lot. They're super cheap. And there are a couple expensive lines that I really like. So that's why I like Buffalo 2 tonight. I am MMEing, so you'll hear me say I'm playing a lot of these lines. But I plan on being pretty overweight on Buffalo 2. These top 2 lines aren't my favorite. I like other top lines elsewhere. So I'm probably going to come in underweight on both of these. I think the Eichel line might be somewhat popular just because home favorite. You get Pominville on a power play now. And then he's under 4K. I just think both of these lines are really solid, and they're going to be seeing each other for most of the game. So I don't want to say they cancel out, but I'm just hoping this game stays somewhat quiet outside of Buffalo 2. I think that's going to be my my ownership edge that I hope goes my way here. Got anything for me, Mac?
No, but I do like the Buffalo 2, and I know my best Twitter enemy is in YouTube chat right now, Seth Hater, not Seth Yates, Seth Hater. But there you go, Buffalo 2. You wanted Nolan to talk about him. I'm kind of here for Nolan. So, but Jake's got us covered here, and yes, I am going to play Buffalo 2 tonight because in honor of the Osmo YouTube Slack, I'm going all in.
All in on Buffalo 2? I don't know that you need to do that.
I'm playing 3 lineups.
Okay. Still, I mean, you can diversify. I think if Alex were on here, he would probably tell you to take 3 separate main stacks and maybe not have many overlapping players. But if you want to go all in, I'm not against that. I mean, I basically did that on San Jose last night, as Eric points out in chat, and it did not work out. So just be prepared to not reap the benefits. So
what do you consider a version of like heavy ownership. Like in basketball, we would say, you get a little dicey when someone's, 70%, but usually it means they're, quote, good chalk. A third guard that's starting at point guard, the regular point guard's out, and he's going to get 30 plus minutes. Okay, that's a good spot. Picking a guy who's cheap like Fred VanVleet, who comes off the bench and doesn't really do anything great, not a good play, not a good chalk play. What is a ownership percentage? Like, how high do they get in goalies? I mean, are goalies like 40% owned? Or are they 70% owned? Where does that land on a 4-game slate like today?
Sure. On a 4-gamer, I would say you're probably not going to see a line go over 30%, or players on a line go over 30%. Like, you might see McDavid at 30% tonight, but that doesn't mean it's going to be a 30% owned stack. He might have a line mate, Cassian, I think he's skating with tonight. He might be, 12%. So if you're stacking the full line, you don't really have to worry about ownership. If you want 20% of the McDavid line and you're playing Cassian, you're probably okay. Some people would say that never play a guy like that, and that's understandable as well. As far as goalies go, I'm really not all that concerned with goalie chalk. Just play the guys that are valuable, play the guys that are going to get you the win. And goalie pricing has been pretty tough lately. Like, there's been no obvious misprices. There's been no home favorites at 7K or anything like that. But then you might see a guy on a 4-game slate be, 30, 35% in the big MME tournaments, but still, it doesn't really worry me that much. So I try not to worry about ownership, especially for goalies, but some stacks you'll see Colorado 1 on a 3 and 4 game slate. If they're at home, they might be like 40-45% owned, and it still might be too low owned depending on how much variance you think plays into the NHL.
All right. And then one other thing to think about, guys, is when you're going to stack a line or your main line that you're doing, go for all 3 of them on the forward line. The reason you want to do this is, unlike in basketball, in hockey, you can have up to 2 assists per goal. There's the second pass, and that's how you see sometimes goalies getting assists. It's rare, but it does happen. But you see, probably 2/3 of all goals, unless it's a breakaway or something, is going to have 2 assists. Now, we don't see that in basketball. So think about how frustrating it is when your guy passes and then that guy, goes like he's going to shoot, and then he gives it to that third guy. You don't get the assist. The last guy to pass it to the player who made the bucket with a basketball move gets the assist. It's not like that in hockey, and that's why you want the whole line, because oftentimes you'll get a goal with 2 assists from your 3 guys, which is, and then you'll see yourself pop up 5 to 7% in the rankings of GPPs.
Yep. Isid in chat says called primary assist and secondary assist. So yeah, he's right on it, he or she. So what EMAC means, if you guys are looking at the screen and not just listening, we've got Skinner, Eichel, and Pominville. So it just means play all 3 of them as kind of your starting point, especially if it's an expensive stack. Trying to pick and choose like some of these really awesome high-priced stacks. Like trying to choose the guy to leave off is tough. Here it'd probably be Pominville. And so like you'll see Pominville be lower owned than Skinner and Eichel tonight. But I would leave them on. I know some people would do different things, and if you're power play stacking, then you obviously wouldn't want to use Pominville. You might use Reinhart instead. It's just different ways of looking at things. I know many pros will only even strength stack, like Osmo himself, and they'll double stack. But there are also pros that do different things, not always full stack, or do power play stacks. So like Dollar Bill won a tournament the other night. He's obviously a very good player. 3 Putts will do some power play stacking, Slewfoot on DraftKings, but you'll see Testosterone and Osmo, Tom, Eddie. Those guys are always full even strength stacking and even strength double stacking. So it's just a different way of looking at things, but you just want to get as much correlation as possible, I think.
All right. When you're looking at the 2 goalies in this game, they're kind of like mid-tier. You mentioned that you're going to be playing 150. Will the guys from this game be gracing your player pool?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm playing 150, so I'm not going to have everyone on the slate, but I'll go to my exposures here and just kind of read off what I'm thinking here. I don't know that this is going to be a super high event game, and if it is, then I don't know that goalies are going to see a lot of low danger shots. So that's what you want out of your goal. You want to see him make easy saves early in the game and just kind of get in a rhythm. But Buffalo's been pretty leaky lately, and then I don't really like the spot for Georgiev. Big downgrade from Lundqvist, in my opinion. So I think I'm going to be pretty low on both of these guys. They're both in the 8 to 10% range for me.
Okay.
And then defenseman here, I do like Ristolainen quite a bit better than a lot of other defensemen tonight. He's going to be my second or third highest owned defenseman tonight. So E-value on Osmo's grades, I don't know if that's a typo or if he just hates Rasmus Ristolainen. But you can play him or Rasmus Dahlin. Dahlin moved up to the top power play. I think in practice yesterday or this morning. So there you have it. He's $900 cheaper. And then Pionk, by the way, is a defenseman, but DK listed him as a winger. So if you're using Cruncher and you're watching the show, I put it in the premium Slack earlier, but I'll just say it on here. You're going to want to somehow avoid getting Pionk instead of Zuccarello or Kreider because he's listed on line 1 and DK mistakenly listed him as a left wing. So if you don't take care of that in Cruncher somehow, you're going to end up with like Zibanejad, Zuccarello, and Pionk instead of Kreider if you're trying to full even strength stack.
Usually that stuff's reserved for FanDuel putting goalies as wingers.
Yeah. Exactly. So I'm not really high on any of these Rangers defensemen anyways. I don't see any prices that really stick out to me, but Shattenkirk would probably be the best just playing power play 1. I usually just default to power play 1 guys with some exceptions. There's Cronwall. There's some really bad guys that never shoot that play on a team's top power play that I still don't think you should play. All right. Anything else here, EMAC, before I kind of move it on to the next one?
No, I think the next one's kind of interesting. I have a love-hate relationship with the Carolina Hurricanes.
Yeah.
I love to hate them.
Yeah, so Carolina, for people that play NHL DFS will know exactly what I'm talking about. They're kind of the kings of being in a good spot, putting up, 35, 40, 45 shots some games and scoring 1 goal. And the opposing goalies have been pretty profitable against them at times this year and last year. They've just really had trouble finishing. I don't know that it's going to be the case tonight, but we will see. We got a 2.6 implied total here for the Oilers, 3.4 for the Hurricanes. Mikko Koskinen going up against Curtis McElhinney. Both these goalies confirmed. I'm really, really high on Carolina 1 here. We were talking about Corsi, just Corsi statistics earlier. And this Carolina 1 line, they've played 124 minutes together. They're creating 83.8 Corsi 4 per 60, which is just exceptional for a sample size that's that big, over 100 minutes. 36 scoring chances, 4 per 60. That is really good as well. And then 14.1 high danger chances. So all those numbers are just incredible. And then I think they're going to go up against McDavid for a lot of their ice time. And, McDavid, really awesome offensively. Defensively, he's not really there with the league leaders. Him and Draisaitl have played super high event. And now they've got Kassian on their wing. Who knows how long it's going to stick with Kassian. So he might be a guy that I would leave off if you're playing full stacks or if you're playing limited lineups. If he somehow stays up there and gets a goal, you're going to be rewarded if you full even strength stack Edmonton 1. But I think this one's mostly about Carolina for me. You see the big total, they're going to be chalky. But I'm just all over the top line. And then I actually like the second line a little bit as a mid-tier / filler stack. I don't see anything that I'm ever worried about on the Oilers. At the very least, Carolina should put up just a ton of shots in this game. So it's mostly about them. I'm going to be underweight on McDavid and Draisaitl. So if they go off and they burn me, so be it. Nolan in chat writes 32% 5v5 share last game for Edmonton 1. That is quite a bit of ice time at 5-on-5. 32% of your team's ice time. That's pretty high. So there you have it.
We had a good question in chat here that'll work out now because it'll play through the whole show. What do we do about goalies? Do you try to take a goalie that you're taking a line with in the hopes that if that line's really going to score a lot, your goalie should get the win. Does it matter as much? Are you okay taking players against your goalie, even on or particularly on a 4-game slate? What are the general rules of thumb for those of us coming over from the NBA?
So 4-game slate, I think, is a little bit too many games, too many options to have a need to play goalies, to play players against your goalie. Even on 2-game slates, sometimes I don't allow in Cruncher for players to go up against my goalie. And if you did, maybe like a defenseman, maybe if it's like Burns and you're playing the goalie against San Jose, you could still take Burns type of thing because he's just got such a good floor. And you're really not looking for a shutout in your goalies anyways, or trying to predict it at least. So there are some cases where I would, but on a 4-game slate, I am avoiding doing that. I've seen it work. I don't think it's really sustainable. I don't think it's necessary. We've got quite a few options on this slate. What was the first question, EMAC?
Does it matter
correlating goalies?
Correlating with your goalie.
Yeah. So it's something I've done more of. I think it's more viable on larger slates where goalie ownership is spread out, because at that point you're looking for 30, hopefully more saves, but it's less likely that the goalie that has an opportunity to break the slate is highly owned, if that makes sense. So like here, I still think you can correlate. I'm correlating in about 2/3 of my lineups. So I think it's a pretty good strategy in general. And you're looking for the win. You hope your goalie sees a lot of shots. But that being said, I think there are cases for one-off goalies as well. Like I said, if Koskinen is standing on his head, which means just playing really well, you could see Carolina put up 35, 40 shots, and Koskinen might even let up 2 or 3, but still reach value in a big way if he's somehow able to sneak out a win. So like on my Edmonton 1 teams, I'm going to have a lot of Koskinen, because if Edmonton 1 does get there, I at least leave myself some outs in that this game doesn't go as I expect. Now I've got some outs with Edmonton 1 and Koskinen in case they do pull it off.
All right. One more good question here before you jump back into the analysis. This is from Miles Stuffs. I like to refer to him as Doctor. He's a really smart dude. I think there's a PhD involved, so that's why he gets to be called Doctor. But he's asking, how do Justin Williams and Sebastian Aho both have an A and a C for their production and value at differing price points on the Osmo grading scale?
Yeah. So I guess the best way to explain it would be like, in my projections, like Aho by himself doesn't grade out as a great value, so like he's in that C to D range if you just take him himself. But if you take the stack in total, they grade out as a better stack for me than they do for Osmo. It looks like he's got him as like a C value, it looks like. But I think they're a better value than what Alex has, just based on how they've played. It'd be like if you had Aho for 5.5 points. Let's say you had him projected for 5 or 5.5 points, and you've got Justin Williams, who's $5,700. He's $1,600 cheaper for 4 or 4.5 points. So they're in that same value range, but it's just accounting for their price. It's just point per dollar. They're in that same value range for Alex.
My great aunt and uncle had a cat named Aho, which was short for asshole.
Oh, wow.
Which is what they named their cat. So, every time I see Aho in my mind, I always think of Aho and just the little cat. And my brother and I were little kids, so we didn't really know what that meant. So when we weren't around, they called him by the other name. So.
Well, hopefully no one's calling Sebastian that after tonight, because I might be broke if they do. So I'm going to be heavy on Carolina 1 here, is what I'm trying to say. I don't really like any of the depth here for Edmonton. They've got a couple interesting defensemen, Nurse, Clefbaum, both guys that do attempt a lot of shots. Clefbaum less lately, and generally I like to take defensemen on Edmonton who just correlate to McDavid, because they're such a dumpster fire elsewhere that I just hope that McDavid can get it done if I'm taking Oilers skaters, and Nurse would be that guy playing in the power play 1 for the last several weeks. If you are looking to punt, Chris Russell isn't a ceiling play by any means. If he somehow gets you an assist, that would be the cherry on top, but he's got a shot to block quite a few shots tonight. He's a guy that is regularly amongst the league lead in block shots, and we're expecting Carolina to put a ton on net and probably a ton elsewhere. Just shot attempts going to be in their favor, you'd think, here. So you could play Russell at 3,400 if you need someone in that range. And then on the other side, I really like Dougie Hamilton. You see Osmo, a points grade A value. I would definitely agree with that. He's one of my top defensemen on the night, even though he's not on the power play the power play 1. I still think you're fine playing him with Aho, Niederreiter, and Williams. Probably going to see a fair amount of time with them at even strength. And then Falk is more the obvious guy, but if I'm one-offing, just because I say obvious because power play 1 for Falk. So if you're going to Carolina 1, it makes sense to play Falk. But as a one-off, I just think Hamilton has so much higher upside and might even be lower owned than Falk. Anything in chat here?
No, I think we're good. Just a reminder, chat, to like the video. Also, I'm dropping the link in there that's going to get you to the main Osmo page. We've got 2 free articles today, plus the primer, the hockey primer from Alex. Of course, if you use promo code HITTHEICE, you'll get 50% off any 1-month package. For those of you that are NBA package only people, we're opening up all the content for you this weekend. You're going to get PGA, NASCAR, NHL, etc. That'll be open through Thursday when the when the NBA returns. So that's something you'll definitely want to look at. We're going to have a Fast Eddie Fear will be on a show Saturday talking about the All-Star game. We'll have All-Star game projections. We have Rising Stars projections, and then on the homepage I've got a 2,400 words talking about the Rising Stars game, breaking down each of the 20 players in the game. That took a couple hours to write, Jake.
Yeah, no, I read some of it. Yeah, it looks like you did some good work. I saw some people complimenting you on Twitter. So I always appreciated the Showdown articles that you did for NFL, and I'm sure you'll be doing some of those maybe for NBA in the playoffs once we get down to a few games.
There is a chance.
Yeah,
there is a chance.
I might dabble in some of those slates. So I've already given my fair share to the NBA DFS community. So
there we go. Well, we're coming back to return that favor.
Yeah,
so back to the analysis from Jake.
All right, let's go to the next one. We've got a couple more. New Jersey, Minnesota. We've got a 2.5 implied total for the Devils. We have 3.5 for the Minnesota Wild. Probably going to be Keith Kincaid going up against Devin Dubnyk. You say probably because, for Kincaid's sake, because Schneider started last night in Chicago, I believe they were. So usually goalies don't start back-to-backs, especially for bad teams. You don't really need to risk injury, especially for a guy in Schneider who's coming back from injury recently. So all that being said, we think Kincaid's going to start. Of course, check. This game starts at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, so you should know who's starting for the Devils, who's confirmed, and also their line rushes and stuff a half an hour before. So that would put you at about 8 Eastern, maybe 20 minutes before at the latest. You should know both line combos, if the beat writers are in good moods, and then goalies as well. So that's also a pretty decent edge when there are late changes or when lines get jumbled, if you have the ability to recrunch or swap your lineups.
And that, let me interject for just a sec, Jake. That's actually a good thing. So you guys, it's oftentimes hard to find lines. And there are a few sites now that you can look at that are better and are updated relatively frequently. It's also important to find out who's the starting goalie going to be, because there's this big, and this is for me, the outsider, but there's this big thing in hockey that you want to wait till morning skate, because the first goalie off the ice is generally the guy who's going to start. It's tradition. It's just back to the original 6, all of that. But so if the backup goes off first, that's kind of the indication that he will be the one who's starting that night. Now, the beat reporters are almost always at practice, usually more than one of them, because they're looking at this, they're seeing who's skating together on the line. So the sites you can look to for this are Goalie Post is okay. Left Wing Lock is a little better, and then I like to go to daily face-off. I like daily face-offs format. I like looking at, and they have lines, power plays, all that stuff by team. It's pretty slick and straightforward. But sometimes you're going to find on Sundays or some of those early games on Saturdays or a weird start time, they're not going to know who the goalie is. Now, they won't say it until it's confirmed. And these guys usually, I mean, they'll give you a likelihood like, we don't know, we think, and confirmed. And if you don't have it confirmed, you're like, you have to sit around and figure it out. Now, you usually know at no worse than 10 or 12 minutes before lock, because somebody at the stadium will say, oh, it's so-and-so. But just be careful of that, because there's nothing more frustrating than having a good lineup or going out to dinner thinking you have a guy in one of the later games, and then for whatever reason he's not starting as the goalie. It's frustrating. So don't lose sight of that.
Oh, exactly. And some coaches are a little more tight-lipped than others. Some beat writers refuse to post lines. Some are super inconsistent. So, there's good teams. There's someone mentioned the Devils. There's some good beat writers there. But like teams like Columbus have kind of given us the runaround a little bit this season. There's certain examples. But the best thing, I think, is just to have Twitter open and follow a beat writer list. So Votz, Jeff Votz, a guy that works for Osmo, and he's in this chat. Maybe not right now, but he does some content for us. He does the power plays quite often. He has his own beat writer list that he made. So I popped that in the YouTube chat. Check that out. Subscribe to it, I think it's called. And that will have the information as it comes in, a half an hour or so, 20 minutes to a half an hour before games. So you can see any late changes and adjust your lineups accordingly, because there are quite a few dead lineups night after night, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot tonight, but hopefully not from people that are watching this.
Yeah, and that's another great thing about the Osmo Slack is, we've got Jeff Votz is in there, another contributor, Chris Wassel, yourself, Nolan Kelly, Osmo pops in from time to time, Tom comes in from time to time, 1-800-EDDIE. Those guys are all playing heavy volume in hockey and such, but it's nice to get, and Votz is usually front and center, but he always is popping out with an all-channel alert, hey, so-and-so's out. Minutes before lock, and then you can get your guy out of there, because they don't really show these on the DK app or whatever other news alerts you have. These guys are following the beat writer, so there's still a little tiny bit of an edge there. So that's one thing that because there's not a ton of mainstream good content here for NHL. If you're a member getting the projections, the premium stuff, Alex's grades, you're going to be able to put together competitive lineups every night. Yep. I'm not guaranteeing you're getting rich, but it's fun to dabble, and you're not going to be drawing dead from the beginning.
For sure. All right, so someone said, Aaron says, why is Falk more than Hamilton, or why is Falk more than Hamilton based on being PP1? Hamilton's PP2, but in DK's algorithm, they have him priced higher. I'm assuming because he attempts and gets more shots on goal, and he's just kind of a better player on his own, whereas Falk's price is more tied to the players around him. So by himself, I don't know that he's got a ton of upside. It's more because of the power play one. So Hamilton is going to be a popular play tonight. I mean, everybody loves him. I love him. I'm always talking him up. A lot of people really like him because he attempts so many shots. So that's why.
Well, for a defense man, he really stands out. Yeah. Even I'm well aware of who he is.
Yeah. And he's playing more minutes now. Yeah. All right, let's get to this Minnesota game pretty quick. Like I mentioned, the Devils on a back-to-back. We've got these Minnesota lines that we've seen the last couple games. Parise with Granlund and Coyle, and then Greenway with Stahl and Zucker. This Granlund line. Granlund, after not playing center for like 2 years, just steps right in, and this line's had some success. They've played pretty high event both ways. I don't exactly know what the line matching is going to look like here. And then we've got some uncertainty here with the Devils lines. I know Palmieri went back with Nico Hischier and Jesper Bratt at some point during the game last night. And then there's no morning skate, which is pretty standard for the Devils, being it being a back-to-back. So you're probably not going to have confirmation on Devils lines. If you're only playing a couple lineups, I don't think you really need to worry about playing Devils skaters. I think it's a really good spot for Minnesota, and specifically the Granlund line. they've got a pretty balanced top six with Stahl and Zucker on the quote-unquote second line. Greenway's playing a little bit better, and he's mid-salary. So there's merit, I think, in both of these top lines for Minnesota. I'm not sure there's a bad matchup against the Devils. But yeah, I really lean to the Granlund line if you can afford them. And then Suter and Spurgeon, the two top defensemen for the Wild, those guys are going to play a ton of minutes here. And you see Suter, 8 points, grade A value. I think he's going to be the one that people go to because of the top power play tag. But similar to what we just talked about in Carolina, Spurgeon PP2 tag, but like Hamilton, he's the guy who I think has more upside by himself. So if you're correlating, if you want to play the power play one guys, Suter's probably your guy, but both him and Spurgeon I think are really awesome plays in this game for their prices. And they're probably going to skate a ton with both of the top two lines here. So take your pick between those two. Mix and match if you're playing a bunch of lineups. That's what I plan to do. And then
do you ever play both defensemen from the same line or same team?
I get to that more when I'm hand building. So there are some examples. One that comes to mind is like when PK Subban was out earlier in the season, you had Ryan Ellis and Roman Josi both skating with each other, which is standard. They play a lot with each other throughout the season. So they were playing with each other at even strength, but they were also playing on the top power play together. And they were playing with guys like Arvidsson and Forsberg and Ryan Johansson, so Nashville's top line. And I don't know if they're all healthy at that time, but you get the point. Like, those guys could very well team up for a goal on the power play or even at even strength. If they swing it across the blue line and one of them rips it in for a goal, like, that's a stack that not a lot of people are going to have. So I think you can do that with Suter and Spurgeon if you're getting away from 3-3, or even if you want to play them both and you're stacking elsewhere. If they fit, I think that's an okay strategy.
One other quick one here. Is there any merit to fading the first or the earliest game on a slate? Sometimes we do that in basketball because we get a lot more news breaking late and it gives you flexibility. I would say, just my take on it, and this is just a 4-gamer, if there was one lonely little outpost game on a bigger slate, maybe, and there was some uncertainty, but I don't think there's as much uncertainty in hockey as there is. I mean, about once a night, some random person is sitting that's kind of a key player, but it's coming from all of the different teams. And it's not like you're going to have, oh, crap, I had him on 40% of my teams. It's usually, okay, I'll get him out real quick. Yeah. So I don't know that there's an advantage. Plus, I think you're shutting yourself off from some of the good defensive teams, or like Buffalo 2 line and stuff like that. You're going to miss some of the key value. I think missing out on it for hockey that's just my general take. What is your take, living, breathing this day in, day out? Is there ever merit to just saying I'm going to step back and wait?
That's interesting. I don't know that I've ever done that intentionally. I tend to gravitate towards the later teams, and I think it's more of an ownership thing. I think oftentimes when some of these East Coast teams, like two that come to mind are Pittsburgh and Washington, when they're in a good spot and they're at home, so meaning they're probably going to be the 7 Eastern or 7:30 Eastern game, first game of the slate, they get just I think way over-owned sometimes. So that might be why I more gravitate towards the later teams that might be in a similar spot that are going to have less ownership. So I don't know. I don't do that intentionally, but now that you think of it, it's not news-based. It's more ownership-based and slate-based.
So there is a potential reason for it. You just it so much is going to depend on slate, et cetera. Whereas in the NBA, if you got one 7 o'clock game, one 7:30 game, and then 6 games starting at 8 o'clock or later, you're like, well, a whole hour, a lot can change where I can really get a leg up on people. Hockey doesn't move quite that quickly.
Sure.
Unless there's food poisoning, right?
What website am I looking at? Nicholas asks. This is the Osmo.com NHL lineup builder. So
talk about that for a second, because that's a fun one if you're doing a little hand building.
Yeah, so if you're hand building, that's the key. It's not an optimizer. We have Fantasy Cruncher. We have that add-on, as you guys know, as EMAC has talked about. I think Fantasy Cruncher is a must if you're doing MME for NHL, or really for any sport. But that's besides the point. This is more for if you're making 1 or 5 or 10 lineups, and it's just a cool layout. You've got the power play tags, you've got the line combos. They get updated periodically throughout the night, and then you can just straight click guys in and then export the lineup once it's completed. And you see how much salary is remaining. You see the average salary. So just like you're building on DraftKings, but you could build a few at a time and then create a new lineup and do the same thing. So it's just kind of a cool visual.
You can export it. That's the key with this. You can export it. So once you've got what you want, you can bring it out, put it up into DK. That part's easy. You don't really build more than 10 this way. It just gets a little onerous.
Exactly. So I really like it. I use it for hand building, and I'm sure a lot of premium subscribers do as well, because it's just a pretty cool layout. It helps you see more of the slate. I'm not sure there's other things like this at other sites. And certainly you can't see all this information when you're building on DraftKings or FanDuel.
All right, getting back into hockey, Adam Larson, or is Brandon J crazy?
Adam Larson? I have a personal vendetta against Adam Larson because he was traded for Taylor Hall straight up a couple years ago. So actually, I kind of feel bad for the guy now that it
hasn't kept up his end of the bargain.
Taylor Hall, Hart Trophy winner last year. But yeah, no, he's okay. I mean, he's more of a guy that I'd play at min salary. So on FanDuel, if he's min salary over there, I'm not playing there tonight. But if he is, I guess it's okay. I'd more play him when he's like 29 and 3K on DraftKings when I'm looking for block shots. And this would be a good spot for it. I just think Russell's probably just as good, if not better, for a few $100s cheaper on DK tonight. And plus he gets power play too. Not that it is a huge deal, but just an extra bump in Russell's favor. So yeah, that's my Adam Larson take. That's really all I have on the Devils game. Go to the last game of the night here. We've got about a half an hour until lock, so let's do Bruins and the Anaheim Ducks. 3.1 implied total for the Bruins, 2.3 for the Ducks. Yaroslav Halak confirmed, possibly going up against Kevin Boyle, who's coming off a shutout in his NHL debut. And I think we're going to see some pretty heavy chalk here from the Bruins. Now, if they're at home, I think they would be a slam dunk. No doubt about it. Highest owned stack of the night. They're coming off a big performance where they were kind of the stack you needed to have 2 nights ago. Or maybe it was 3 nights ago. But they've been hot lately. And you've got Heinen, who's pretty cheap, filling in for the injured David Pastrnak. And you understand why Boston's chalk here. Anaheim amongst the league lead in Corsi against per 60, scoring chances against per 60, and high danger chances against per 60. They take a lot of penalties, and they're not necessarily very good on the penalty kill either. So a lot of things pointing in Boston's favor. You've got Bergeron and Marchand both on the top power play here. You can correlate with DeBrusk if you don't want Heinen. Same thing with Krejci, who's playing top power play minutes with no Pastrnak. So it's really hard not to like Boston here. I'm with the chalk here. I don't know exactly where the field is going to end up, if they're going to be 20, 25%, or maybe if they're going to sneak in towards the 30%. I think there's enough options on this small slate where they're not going to be 30% like in that big $5. But if they're around 18 to 22%, I'm going to be pretty much with the field on them. So I don't want to take a huge stance on them. They're really expensive. They kind of handcuff the rest of your lineup. And I've got Carolina 1 being really close to them in raw points and a little bit of a better value. So I do like Boston 1, but not taking a major stand on them, at least where I think ownership is going to come in tonight. Boston 2, I think, is a fine filler, but I don't really love Krejci or Solaric all that much. Their prices as a trio are okay, and they're probably going to see the better matchup. They're going to avoid the Getzlaf line, so it makes sense. But again, I'm just not taking a huge stance here on either Boston line. Yeah, Pastrnak thumb injury. Yep. On the Ducks side, this was maybe even more interesting just to see what the Getzlaf line is going to be owned like. Because for me, they were coming up as an okay value before I what am I trying to say? Before I even looked at line matching, you distracted me, Emac. Typing weird stuff in the chat. But I do think they're going to pop up as a decent value here for some people. And I kind of limited them in that like 8 to 10% range. So I don't know. I'm probably going to be around the field on Perry, but I think Raquel and Getzlaf, just because of their prices and because of the caliber of players they are, or at least perceived to be, are going to be a little bit higher owned than I'd like. So full stacking them or nothing. I'm not messing around with trying to nitpick Nick Ritchie or Henrique in lieu of Perry. I'd rather just go Raquel, Getzlaf, and Perry if you can do that. But again, just a really tough matchup for the Getzlaf line against Bergeron, one of the best two-way centers, probably the best two-way center in the entire NHL. So it's just a tough matchup for the Getzlaf line, and I think they might come in a little bit over-owned. I was telling the guys in chat, Nick Ritchie is out. Okay. Nolan just popped in and said Nick Ritchie's out. Interesting. Nolan, do you know who's going to fill in? And while we're waiting for you, on delay a little bit. I do like Silfverberg. He was kind of the one-off guy. For me, if you're in this range, he's going to be not owned at all. But he's been playing better. He plays better when there's no Kessler, when he's off his line. And there's obviously no Ryan Kessler tonight. He shoots more. He's just more aggressive, playing with players that aren't hurt or are competent. So Silfverberg is kind of the one-off guy I would get to if I was hand building a little bit tonight at 4,400.
Right. Anaheim is just so bad. I mean, they're 3-18 in their last 21 in that stretch. They've given up 4, or they've had 4 shutouts, 8 games where they scored 1 goal, and then several others where they scored 2. And some of those 1-goal games, the last one, they actually beat Vancouver, another pitiful team. The Sedin sisters need to be done. But anyway, yeah, I know it's the retirement thing. Shed a tear. They were around forever from that one. Shout out to a couple of people in chat that I know are laughing that I'm here. Yes, I do play a little bit of NHL. This is a one-time deal, once per year, much like Santa Claus and the Grinch. I cruise in here. Shout out to Jay Walker. Haven't seen him around in a while. Former contributor on DK Playbook, Fanvice, Daily Fantasy Bootcamp on other sides. Earl Fountain, yes, you can teach an old dog new tricks. And then thanks to everybody that's come on over here for NBA. We're going to be featuring NHL for the rest of the week. We're actually moving the NHL show. It'll start 5:15, 5:30 most days, depending on the size of the slate. You'll get back to seeing Jake and Nolan on the big days. Jake will be handling the solo on the shorter days that are coming up, but this will be a lot of fun. Remember, if you have an NBA subscription, all content is free for you just for this NBA All-Star Break week. Hit that like button on the way out, and you can use promo code HITTHEICE, all one word, to get 50% off any 1-month package there at awesemo.com. I want to hit a few of your high notes here. If you were ranking your goalies tonight.
Oh, God. I'll go by what I have for exposure.
Okay, perfect.
So it's gonna be pretty chalky. So Dubnyk is my top guy. Him and Halak kind of in a tier of their own. So I just think those guys are pretty safe to get a win. I think Halak, maybe on the road, he sees a little bit more volume. Maybe if they try to get the Getzlaf line away from Bergeron, that would leave him pretty thin elsewhere, and they'd probably get crushed. But anyways, I've got Halak seeing decent volume, and he's a big favorite even though he's on the road. And then after that, McElhinney for Carolina. Again, 8,100, but I just don't really like Edmonton skaters, so he popped in quite a few of my lineups, a little bit as a one-off, but I do really love Carolina 1, and the Carolina second line I like quite a bit as well. Outside of them, everyone else I have below 10%, and I don't plan on crunching again before the slate starts. So I've got Georgiev, Allmark, Boyle, Koskinen, and Kincaid all within 3 to 9%. So none of those guys I really like all that much. I'm pretty chalky tonight, as I probably am a lot of nights, but just try to differentiate at a couple spots. So go ahead. Oh yeah, I was gonna say a couple spots are going overweight on Carolina 1, and then going underweight on the McDavid line and the Getzlaf line, for that matter.
All right. One of the things, and maybe you can just explain it for a second. So people say, "Oh, so and so's the chalk line. So and so's the chalk line." Well, you and I talked that a lot of players, even some of the top players, still don't play a full stacking three on a line. So one of the things you always want to say is your line is only as chalky as whatever the lowest guy owned is, because of the primary and secondary assists.
Yep, exactly. No, I mean, you put it perfectly. I don't know that I've got a ton to add to that, but I guess an example I mentioned a couple times would be Zach Kassian. So he's cheap. If you full stack it, and that's what I plan to do, just because he allows you to get in a little bit more with McDavid and Draisaitl. So you just want him to get in on the scoring somehow. If he scores a goal, I mean, that's awesome, because a lot of people are just going to leave them off of the McDavid and Draisaitl stacks. So when you are playing those guys, I think you can go underweight on the you're going underweight on the top guys. Like I said, McDavid and Draisaitl might be 20 or 25% owned, but Kassian could be 7%. And if you have 10% of the full stack and Kassian is competent, and that's the full stack, you're still saving yourself. So it's just kind of a lineup construction thing. That's the way I think of it. Hopefully it makes sense to people, and hopefully I'm not just talking for the sake of talking. But I like to full even strength stack, just to reiterate.
All right. Wrapping it up for us. So you got 24 minutes to lock. The slates are going to be a little bit bigger tomorrow. Jake, of course, will have a show with Nolan. There'll be there's an early slate. I think it goes up there's like a 1 o'clock game and a 3 o'clock game, but the main one will be at 7. Focus on that. We've got the Osmo NHL Primer. That is free. He breaks down overarching strategies for the NHL. We've got a couple other free articles up there. What are the free articles that we have for that you and Nolan were do? What can gamers expect free, and then I'll hit the paywall stuff.
Sure. So I just went to the primer. That's right here. Osmo, it's a free article. He just kind of goes over basic NHL strategy. That has always been free. We've got my stacks article, which is somewhere around here on the NHL page. It's probably way down because we've got a good amount of content coming out every day. The stacks article right here is free. So I do one of those Monday through Saturday. So I'll post that in chat as well if you guys want to get a last second look on a couple stacks I like. The power plays are premium, and then the line changes are free. So this is kind of a interesting article, one that I had an idea for Nolan this year, because he used to follow the Canucks, I believe, and he's done a really good job
as a beat writer. People don't know that, as an actual beat writer.
So it's called line changes, or news and notes, but it's an article where he kind of sums up anything notable that happens during the morning skate or since the last time teams have played. It's just a good place to get kind of everything you need, because it's easy on these bigger slates like we'll have tomorrow to forget certain things. So this kind of sums it up, like, oh yeah, I forgot that so and so got put on the power play 1 and this guy got bumped down. So that might change some things for people.
And the last time these guys played, so-and-so got a major for fighting. There's little other tidbits that pop in there that you would not know unless you're really following every little nuance.
Yep. So
that's key. The premium stuff, of course, we got the lineup builder. That's a lot of fun there. Again, that's more for hand building, but you can export your lineups and upload them to the site of your choice. You also have the projections. Those are Jake's baby. You have the rankings from Alex. Again, he does forwards, wings, centers, defensemen, goalies, and then lines, which is that's what my favorite thing is, because when I want to play, I'm like, all right, what are the best couple lines? Let me construct a team around them, and then I got a fighting chance in this stuff. You get from Jake also the cheat sheet. It gives you a nice culled down player pool where you can if you can get most of those guys on a lineup. Again, we like the correlation. You want to stack as that primary and secondary assist, but you get that in there and you got a fighting chance, and that's all we really want for us NBA guys for the next few days.
Yeah.
Although we would like to ride in, take all your wine, women, and money and ride back out. But I don't think that's going to happen. The regular puckheads are going to be defending the DFS turf very well, I think, this next week.
We'll see. I hope to see some screenshots tonight in chat, though. It'd be pretty cool. And some NBA guys got some little wins, even. It's always nice to win at something you're just learning. So get that instant gratification. If you don't win, and I wouldn't suggest going all in. There is a little bit of a learning curve to NHL DFS. I think less than other sports, but I think you guys will enjoy it. And hockey's fun to watch, especially when you've got some money involved in it. So,
well, thank you for letting me join and crash your show, bringing the NBA fellas here with me. Get us on out of here, Jake.
Yeah, guys, again, just don't go all in tonight. You've got a few days. If you're an NBA player and you're looking to add another sport to your repertoire, it's a good night to jump in because there's only 4 games. But also, again, don't spend it all. Like, you're going to be tilted when there's a full line goal and you get passed by. But don't let that discourage you. Diversify if you're playing a lot of lineups. That's the best thing you could possibly do, is diversify and take a couple stands and hope it works out your way. So good luck tonight, guys. And I will see you tomorrow. I believe I'm doing a show. So see you then. Thanks for tuning in, and feel free to give us a like if you did enjoy this.